The thing about Baba was he was very open. He loved everybody. I mean, really, when I was there, there was so much respect for him. He was like the elder in a family. He did not provide supernatural experiences for us, but he gave us the understanding of things, many of which the world has never heard before. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that as well, so you get the idea. There is another movie that I'm working on, and this film is going to be quite unique amongst Baba films because it's going to show it's going to explain the difference between Meherababa's experience in his God state and what we experience in our state of being in the world of separateness and the Maya. There is an enormous difference, and that's how come he can work and be the avatar the way he is. But I'll talk more about that. But I do want to say this about it. When Baba was explaining this, he said there is only one self in existence. There is no two selves. We see many selves. And he said the reason for that is because you're living in a dream of the world. And you take it to be real because you don't have any other experience of anything else. So naturally you take it as real. But it's all imagination from the point of view of the master, who is in the God state of consciousness. But then Baba also explained, he said the God state, God is not someone else. It is a state of consciousness in which you come to know your real self, your full self. And his mission as the avatar is to clear the way so that you can actually experience that, because there's so many mental impressions that you've acquired over the ages, especially through the evolution of developing consciousness. But as a human being, the only requirement to enter the human form is to have a full consciousness. Doesn't mean how good or bad, that's all the impressions on the mind that he would say. So to him, it was what I call a come as you are party. You came as you are. Whatever your backgrounds were, whatever your religions were, whatever your nationalities are, it didn't matter to him. Because to him, you're all family. And and the reason you're all family is because there is only one self behind all the bodies and minds that we all have as individuals. But behind every person's body and mind, there is one self, the same self, that is Baba. And that is the self that the whole spiritual path is all about, to experience it. It's not enough to hear about it, which is what Baba told us. He said, you can understand in your intellect what I'm explaining, but the experience is altogether so much different when you experience it. You can say it's comparable to a blind man who cannot see colors. He cannot see form. He cannot see anything. But you see, others, even though he's blind, can explain to him what they think it's like so that he can understand that much. But it all is impossible to explain, because all he's got to do, if he could open his eyes and actually see it, there would be no need for any explanation. And it would be totally different than what anyone could explain about it. So this is what happens in the God state. According to Baba, that state of infinite bliss, when he says infinite, that means unlimited. That means there's no end. This is the source of all happinesses. And Baba is in that state all the time. But so he tells about it. He says, this is the state of infinite bliss of your own eternal existence. Eternal, you're existing eternally. doesn't look like it, people drop dead. But that's the body. The inhabitant of the body has to move on when it doesn't work anymore. Body stop working, you got to move on. But and maybe take another birth uh, in order to complete or continue completing what you didn't complete before. So Baba is really telling us something very unique. First of all, that we're living in a dream that looks real from his point of view, not ours. See, there's nothing that I see that doesn't look real to me, but I can understand that I have dreams at night that you see the people, whoever you create in your dream at night, and you say the buildings and you see the sky. You might even see a scientist looking through a telescope and trying to see how far the universe goes. All of these things you can imagine, all imagination. Even the past. You think the past is real? It has to be remembered in the present. What about the future? It has to be anticipated. Whatever you may anticipate the future, it's still in your imagination, and the only reality is the now, because that is always present, the now. You always live in the now. Never you can't live in the future or the past. You can remember them, you can anticipate it, you can imagine it, but that's not real. Imagination is not the real thing. So anyhow, Baba would give us to understand it in his very kind and loving manner. And nobody has to do anything they don't want to do. You can take his advice or not. Of course, if you took his advice, things work out. If you don't take his advice, you're on your own as to what happens. And I was asked, many times I've actually asked this here, of how is it that I came to see Meherabad the first time? And I had no money. I had not enough money to fly there or get there. I even tried working my way across on a ship or boat or something, and I couldn't get anyone to take me and to find out whether they're even going to India. So this was all difficult. I mean, I wanted desperately to see Baba because Mani had written a circular at that time saying that Baba would soon be entering seclusion, during which time he would not receive any visitors and he would not receive any correspondence either, except in an emergency you could send a telegram. So this was due to happen when he enters seclusion. And when I got that, I was really, I was desperate. I wanted to get over there and nothing was working out. And it was 6 months from the time that I started to want to go. Oh boy, that was too much for me. So I said, I got to do something. But in desperation, sometimes the right idea comes as to what you should do. So the right idea for me was that I would sit down and write a letter to Mayor Baba directly. And in it, I said, Dear Baba, I want very much the benefit of your love, your direction, and your guidance. But the only thing preventing me from coming to see you is that I don't have all the money to do so. And I can't see where money should stand in the way of such an ideal. However, I know it is possible to come and see you if you will it. And if you will it, I will be there. And then I sent that off. I knew there was nothing I could do. So Baba answered, and he answered right away. He answered so fast, I didn't know the mail could go that fast from India, because I was in Miami in the United States, only half a world away. Well, anyhow, Baba replies, one sentence is all he said. He didn't say a whole lot. Don't worry, circumstances will adjust themselves. Love, Meherabad. Well, to cut it short, 2 weeks later, I'm there. I'm with him now. Oh boy. And the reason I'm talking about Baba really seeing us all as a family, there was no fear of him or anything because he's in the almighty state and everything. Religions often think that you got to do, if you don't do it right, you're going to go to hell, and if you do it right, you go to heaven. And I don't know. Baba was not like that. Baba didn't care what your past was, because to him, he had to wipe out all the impressions of the past so that you could see your real self, because that was blocking your view from the self. All these impressions, whether they're good ones and you did the worst things to people, I'm just taking an extreme, or you were fighting the most noblest of causes. It was all illusion. It was all imagination. This is the way the mind functions. The framework of the mind creates imagination, and you can imagine anything. So it is said also that if you want anything and you really want it with all your heart and mind, the imagination can be arranged to give you your wish. Oftentimes you get what you want, but then all the other things that come with it is not exactly what you want, but you can't see that part. I walked in to where Baba was inside in this room where there was about 15 people, and he asked me, well, first of all, he came over, he just motioned for me to come over, his arms were out, and he embraced me and gave me a big hug and kissed me on my cheeks, and then he had me sit near him, and he said, how did you come? So I said, it was your will, because 6 months I'm trying, I can't do nothing. As soon as he gave me that message, no became yes. It's nice when it does. Everything was working out excellently, which to me it's like a miracle. But, I once wrote about magic. Is there really such a thing as magic? And what about it? And magic, it can only be magic if you don't know how it's done. Miracles can only be miracles if you don't know how it's done. But the moment you know how it's done, will you call it magic or miracle? Not at all, because in fact, so many things today that we have and we take for granted, cell phones and airplanes and rocket ships and television and all of these things, it used to be miracles to anyone that would say that. They wouldn't even believe you. Today, you just take it for granted, you see. So no matter what miracle is occurring, once you know how it's done, it's not a miracle anymore, because it's something that is really happening in your life. Well, anyhow. So this man in the back of the room where Baba is sitting and I'm there now, he raises his hand and he asks, but how did you get the money? Because he must have been there when my letter came, because Baba would have these letters read out. Could you hear everything, or was that blocking? Okay. Baba would have the letters read out in the morning, and they'd come from all over the world. I couldn't understand a lot of the languages, but the English, of course, I understood that. And he seemed to be able to understand everything, whatever language there was. And later on, recently, I was thinking, how is it possible to understand any and every language? Well, I had an experience with Muhammad the Must when I was present there in India, and he wanted to have, so he kept saying to me, Pani. He wanted Pani. I didn't know what Pani was. So I said to Mohammed, I'm sorry, I don't know what it is. And then he kept saying, but then all of a sudden, he said, water. You see, in perfect English. Well, I saw that in his state, in the mental world, which we don't perceive that, of the desires and the feelings and how they manifest and how they're created and how they're distributed. See, we don't see all that. But we have desires and we have feelings. So we have some understanding of it. Now, Mohammed, when he said that, I thought, how does he know to say that? He's not supposed to know the language. But if you have the intention and you can project it to another person, just the intention of what you want, but really in some way where he was capable of to project it to someone, they will coat that intention into their own language of words and sounds. Because language is just for communication, it's just the sounds. And then you understand it. So when you get to that point, you'll be able to do that. Isn't that nice? You see, attaining the higher planes, going to all the planes is considered the spiritual path. That's the spiritual path. When they talk, you have to go on the spiritual path. It is not having to do religious rites and rituals and ceremonies and traditions to be followed. That is not the spiritual path. But when you enter the spiritual path, you begin to ascend through the planes. And that's so beautiful and so attractive that they never want to leave any plane that they're on because they never had such a terrific experience of everything. But Baba was saying, I've not come to put you on the spiritual path through these planes. I'm going to take you from where you are to where you should be. You see? I mean, he had such a simple way of putting it. And where should you be? You should be knowing the infinite self as I do, Baba would say. You need to, I've come down to your level to bring you up to mine. And what is his level as the highest of the high? Well, it's the highest experience of infinite power, infinite knowledge, infinite existence, unlimited everything. There are no barriers, there's no difficulties, because you are seeing yourself as one with the Creator and you like the Creator. You see, you think that Jesus and Buddha and Krishna and Mohammed, Baba would explain, it was all the same one coming again and again because there is no one else. There is no one else out there. He's the only one. And when he comes as these people. But then when you realize God, as they all have the realization of being the one self, then you'll see yourself as the one self too. You won't see that they're different. They're all the same one self manifesting in different ways. Well, anyhow, if you can understand all that, you're good. Now, just back to being in the room with Baba, I can tell you that there was a man in the back that asked, but how did you come? And he was, he must have heard I don't know how he came to know that. But anyhow, he asked that question. And I thought right away, I said, he doesn't understand. It could have been done in one of 1,000 ways. You're dealing with the avatar. You're not dealing with just an ordinary person here. He can do whatever he wants, as what he sees is fit for the world and for each individual. So I'm thinking this. Then Baba, he goes like this. That's not important. The way he said it is how he came, see? And, and I forgot to tell you, Baba had me stand up after I said, I'm here because it is your will. Then he had me stand up and repeat it to the group, and that's when this man raised his hand afterwards. See, that's the way that's the events that transpired at that time. If anyone has a question, go ahead.
What year was that?
In 1960. That was my first time visiting Baba. And he told me in a letter that I could come for 1 hour only. And then he would give me his instructions to return back. So 1 hour, halfway around the world you go and all that's involved with that. Well, I just can tell you, I remembered one thing that he said when I read his book. The one who asks for my love will be the chosen one. Well, that was one thing he said, but no, there was another thing he said. Even if the worst scoundrel stood before me and I had the wish, I could make him realize God in less time than the flash of a second. So then I thought, well, I'm not going to worry about the time element. He'll do whatever he sees fit. But Baba did tell me some great, so you see, when I went there, and I've told this before, I wanted to see God. I wasn't going there just to meet a man, and even God in human form. I wanted to see the whole thing. Just like he said that he could do this, I wanted him to do this. Well, Baba was very, very interested in what I was doing. He liked it because not too many people would come to say that they just want God. I wasn't coming for other things, for personal desires that you have in your everyday life. I was coming because I wanted to see because you see, Baba would say, I am not this body. I am everywhere in everything. You can't see that, but that's what I see. I am everywhere in everything. And you need to come to that. See, the God state he would point out is in you. It just has to, everything that stands in the way of your experiencing it has to be cleared up, and that's what the avatar's job is. He has this job. It's quite a job, 8 billion people in the world, and you have to deal with all of them, with all their different thoughts and ideas, imaginary. When he talked about world leaders, people get upset because they don't like what this guy does. Maybe they love what this other one does. It's natural for us to think like that. But in Baba, he said, they're all puppets on my strings. The masters control the mind, and everyone functions according to their own thoughts and mind. And so it is that he gives them the thoughts and feelings of what they have to do in their life. And you think that because hundreds of people, thousands, maybe millions die in wars, so why does God allow so much death to go on? Because you don't die. That's what the masters see. We don't see it like that. Bodies die, but the inhabitant has to leave the body and go on and continue on in their learning and in their growth, if possibly in another body, or if they're fortunate enough to get liberation from some master that can do it, then they don't have to come back again. But this is what the avatar does. It's his job description. If you go for a job, they're going to ask you, what do you want and what do you do? And that's what he does. I think he's really great, actually. When you meet Baba, it doesn't have to be in physical form. Most people don't meet him in physical form. Throughout the ages and generations, he's not in a physical body. It's nice, of course, when he is, to be able to meet him that way, but you can focus on him anytime. And if you're, all that's required is sincerity. Because if you really focus on him, then, and explain whatever your personal problems are, or your desire for enlightenment, he hears this because the mind is everywhere. He's in the universal mind, which contains the minds of all beings and everybody. So he is out to help everyone. That's what you do when you're all powerful. What do you think you're going to do? To make yourself a king? It doesn't, to him that's all for children. To fulfill the desires of having money or having anything, that you may desire of the world. But I didn't come for that. I came for him to show me the real thing. Because Baba kept saying, I'm not this body. You have to see me as I really am. And I said, good, I would like to see that. I was a bit bold in those days. Probably still am. I don't know about that. But you have to be truthful and honest with yourself. But I don't know if I said this, but when you're with Baba and all these people would come, it's a come as you are party. He loves it. Here at the Samadhi, during the day, a museum couldn't be more quiet. It was not like that around Baba. It was always full of activity and joyfulness. And Baba loved entertainment and jokes, and he liked music, and they'd sing all kinds of songs. I mean, there was a lot of things that human beings do every day, and Baba just loved the whole thing. But at the same time, he was no one to fool with. If he did say to do something or the other, there was no force involved. He was not a cop that you have to do it. Instead, you either did it or you didn't. If you didn't, as I said before, well, you're on your own as to what happens. But if you did, he already knew what the best route was or the best plan. And it's like my Judy says, the best plan is the one that works. And Baba was telling us what works. So, we were happy with that. Baba was so friendly. There was none of this fear or feeling that you're abandoned or that there's someone else higher than you, even a Mandali. A Mandali member, Mandali is an old term, an ancient term actually. It means, it was when women in those cultures would obey the man as if he were God, you see? Try that out today and it won't work. But that's the way it was then in certain cultures, only certain cultures. So it was the one who serves and the one who obeys, and that term is what's put on the Mandali because they do serve and obey, and they worship Baba at the same time, you see. So that's what was happening with that. And Baba didn't care for people to bow down to him. In Guru Prasad, there was one day when 10,000 people came. And Baba asked me to hold a pillow over his feet because he didn't want anyone to bow down to him, to prevent that. So I did, and they would come, and because it is the custom, spiritually, or religiously, I should say, to bow down to the feet of a master or a saint or someone that you revered. And Baba didn't want that. He wanted you to look at him as not only the divine self that he was, but as a friend, like my dad used to look. You see, should I say about my father?
Yes, please, yes.
My dad started off when I see something was happening. For 3 years, I was feeling that I was being guided, and I was being guided. By whom, I don't know, but I had that guidance. And I was, any question that I would ask about karma or life or anything, I'd get an immediate response, answer. It would come in my own mind. There were no voices, but it would come in my own mind right away. Well, one day, I get this, so my brother, in the meantime, who had no spiritual feelings, was studying to be an actor. And he was pretty good when he was acting. But, so he told me he went to the library to get a book about acting, to further his acting career. Instead, he sees this book called Listen Humanity. Listen Humanity. Wow, what a name for a book, A Whole Humanity. What has this author got to say that is to be for the whole everybody? So he picked it out, and of course that was the book where Don Stevens spent 3 weeks with Baba, and all these groups were coming each week, and they would be living with Baba for those 3 weeks, each week a new group. And he recorded the things that Baba told them, all to them. I don't know who read the book, but if you did, then you know that this is really quite amazing. And when Baba, so now he calls me after he reads that book. He calls me because I was in Miami, he was in New York. And he tells me that he's read a book about a master who lives in India. He says he's God. And he thinks that because I'm interested in spiritual things, I'll be wanting to know about this. And I'm listening to him. I have no interest at all in this, because I already feel I'm being inwardly guided, you see. So this was now not something that I thought I would want. Until in this guidance, after he told me this, the thing came that I should go to New York because I would gain a communication with God. And it was very strong directive at that time to me. Well, I didn't know what was going to happen or anything. So in the meantime, I'm with my family, and I have a job with my dad in his real estate business. And then also there was all of my friends and everyone. So my father, who's really quite sharp, in spite of his ability to be obnoxious, but he is sharp. And so he says, so I told him I plan to go to New York in a couple of weeks. So he says, why do you want to go to New York? And then I said, well, there's things that I think I want to do that I have to do there. I didn't want to tell him because I knew what he would think, you see. I'm not psychic, but this was no problem figuring it out. But he keeps asking, and to the point too. Finally, I say to him, okay, Dad, I want to go because I feel that something is going to happen that I would gain a communication with God. Now, mind you, you're talking to Morris Luck. And he's listening to this. And he is the most materialistic person. Doesn't believe in life after death, He has no connection with these things like that. The only spirituality he did is he would go to Yom Kippur services once a year because we were Jewish. And every Jew, if they don't go at least to that, where they fast all day and want repentance, they can't even be called a Jew anymore, you see. This is the final thing. But he followed a certain amount of the religious tradition. That was as much religion that he had. Anyhow, I tell him this, and he said, "Where do you think you're going? What are you going to do there? You don't know anyone. Your family is here, your friends are here, your job is here, everything is here. There's nothing there. So why are you going?" And I said, "Listen, Dad, I know it's difficult to understand. I don't understand it entirely myself, but I do know one thing. Something real is going to happen that I cannot miss out on it. If I don't go, I'll feel always that I missed out on something, but I have to do this." He says, he says, "Why do these things always have to happen to me?" Yeah, he talks like that. So I said, "It's not happening to you. That's happening to me." So then he says, "I'm not going to say anything more. If I say anything else, you're going to want to object and rebel and go, and you'll just want to do it just to rebel. I say nothing now anymore about this." So I was relieved he wasn't going to bother me about it. And so I did leave in a couple of weeks. I'm in New York, and for 4 days I'm doing this meditation that was always very successful for me in this here hotel, which I rented a room in. It was, I can't say it was a rundown hotel, but it was, it was a poor hotel, kind of. I had no money. I only went with $70. Oh, brother, try going to New York with $70 and see what happens. But just the same, that was it. 4 days now, I'm doing the meditation, waiting for my next direction or instruction. Nothing happens. 4 days of complete nothing coming from anywhere else. Well, next door, there was a church, and there was a priest in the church that my brother told me about. He said when he was in New York. And he said, "You ought to go and talk to him also. Tell him whatever you want." And so I thought, well, nothing's happening right now. I'll go over there. And I talked to the priest. His name was John Dam. I'll never forget that one. John Dam for a priest name? I thought that this is the strangest thing I ever heard. He should at least change his name, maybe to fit in with this profession. But okay. And so I talked with him, and he was very nice man. And he says to me, and he says that he does paintings that one day the world will hear about, but not yet. So I thought, well, that's smart, thinking of the future. But then he says, after I tell him why I'm here, because he asked me that too, and I said, "Look, I'm here because I think I can get closer to God." And he said, "Read this book of Yogananda, the autobiography of a yogi. He served the master, and you will learn a lot about the experiences of the path." So he gave me to understand things. And I'm sort of paraphrasing things, but nevertheless, that was what it was. And I had no intention. I said, here I am. I'm out to find God, and now I'm talking to a priest who is not even my own religion. And he's telling me about a yogi that's not his religion. And where is God in all of this? So I thought, oh, well, I'll go to the library, I'll read it there. And I did. And then I read that book, and it was really quite fascinating. But I learned something. I learned about masters. I had no idea about masters living in the world. It made sense to me that there should be some people that have achieved the highest or the advanced consciousness or whatever it is. But I didn't know anyone like that. But just the same, I read the book, and as I'm reading it, I'm now remembering what my brother Edward was telling me. He said that, let me see, he said about the book about Mayor Baba. So I'm thinking, this Mayor Baba, I got to read this about this Mayor Baba. He spoke of him as a master. So I read the book. And in the book, two things really strike me. His tremendous love, in which he would bow down and wash the feet of the poorest of the poor, and while at the same time declaring himself as the God in human form. This was the most humble act that you can possibly imagine. And yet, at the same time, he was who he was. And who he is where, he is. But so he explained that the reason why he does this, it's because this is a model that he wants to project for all the benefit of humanity in time to come. The lepers and the others that came, that he would bow down to, he said, these diseases will be now eliminated. And because you see, Baba is not a prophet. He's not one that predicts the future. He makes the future. So naturally, he knows everything. You make the future, you're going to know it all. But a prophet tries to predict what the future may hold, which is quite different and isn't always correct at all. But anyhow, so Baba was doing that. That was the first thing that impressed me. His tremendous love. Wow. Love will get you every time. You can't beat love. Love is good. It's the universal language because there isn't anyone who says, or I've ever talked to, that said they didn't like love. I don't care what their other beliefs were. Love was good. So now Baba was expressing this kind of love for everyone that came to him, everyone that met him. Many people met Meher Baba in their life. He may have seen maybe, I don't know, hundreds of thousands or millions of people in the course of his life. And he said what he was doing was planting the seeds of love so that that love could blossom into the realization of the infinite self, which then you reach the end of the spiritual path, which is the God state. You see, you're not in the mind, you're now, I should point out this, to attain God realization, when you're living in a dream, what he says is a dream, you don't see it as a dream until he wakes you up. Because the end of the path is to be woken up. It's not that yogas or meditations or all these disciplines and fasting and the various things that people do in their spiritual efforts. No, the real thing is to wake up. But you can't just step out of such a dream or illusion and wake yourself up. You can't do that. But when you do wake up, then you see the whole thing that ever happened to you was all nothing, just like when you wake up from your dream at night. However nice it was or bad it was, once you wake up, you see that you made the whole thing up and it was really nothing. With all the people and all the contacts and information and whatever there was, it all turns into zero. And Baba wants you to see yourself for what you really are. And that is the terminus of the spiritual path. It's all about you. You see? Baba can, like we were saying earlier, in everyday life, Baba inspires people. So you can say it this way. He inspires you what to say, but you have to say it. See, there it is. He can inspire you what to do, but you have to do it because it's all for your own growth and learning and development. That's the way it's always been that way. You think this is something new? There's nothing new about it. It's ancient. It's from the time immemorial. Every time the Avatar came in all the recorded history and way before that, because the Earth is really billions of years old. Who knows what went on all that time, and it will continue for some billions of years. And so Baba explained that when the Earth no longer is suitable for habitation, another planet is set up to continue life as it progresses there. It's all so simple, it's a great plan. I couldn't think of a better one myself, I just think of plans. But you don't know this until he tells you everything. For instance, why is there such a huge population in the world today? Like never before in all the history of humanity, there was never billions of people living. And Baba said it's because there are many souls on distant planets and worlds that want to come to the earth to take advantage of the avatar's push and advent. They come for that, and that's why they get born. But the trouble is they can't remember anything. It's not a trouble, actually, but it is the fact. You come in and you get born with a brand new brain, which nothing is written on it. The only thing you can have is intuitions or feelings about doing things. But then it gives you the opportunity to start fresh and to continue your development from a fresh start, regardless of anything you may have done in the past or any connections that you may have had. And then you start, if you could remember it all, you're not developed enough to be unemotional about people that you had met before, and then you're not there with them. All of this is like an old system. You're an inhabitant of the body. You inhabit a machine, a biological machine. If you ever see the pictures of what your internal organs and everything is functioning and everything has to have a part to play, and you have a heart and you have blood vessels and you got all the things. I mean, you couldn't make a better machine. And you inhabit that because you have to learn the lessons that he wants you to have in order to, with your full consciousness, you see, you have one thing, you have a full consciousness, is to be able to see the true nature of the infinite self, which again, I'll repeat, is very nice. You're going to like it when you see it, there's no one that's ever come back to say they didn't like it. Have you found anybody that ever came back to say, oh, I experienced God and I don't like it? No. And they want more yet. Well, Baba prepares people to become a seeker. You just don't become a seeker. In my case, he said I was sent to him by another master. He told me that one day in a sort of offhanded manner. There was nothing particular why he said it. He just happened to mention it. And in my mind, you try to give reason to things. I thought that what he was doing was looking into my history because he can see the whole thing. And so he saw that I was with somebody that was a highly advanced soul. I don't know if he's God, realized it or not, but he sent me on to the Avatar because I was not able to attain enlightenment at that particular time, and maybe even that particular master was not a fully God-realized person. So I have no idea about any of that. But I do know that you have connections in the past. And many of these connections boost you on. They help you. You're always following in the footsteps of those who have come before. part of the humanity that follows in the footsteps of those who have come before. And so, in the course of even many lifetimes, you began to get the urge that you want to see, it's enough is enough already. You want to see the real thing because you've tried so many things, and now you want to see the real thing. Everything you tried lasted maybe for a little while, if it lasted at all, and then it's gone, and there's a new thing, and a new thing, and a new thing. No end to that. And then finally, I got to find out what they're talking about. What is this here? Peace that surpasses all understanding. What is this love that they say is universal, unconditional? It is an energy that affects everyone and everyone and anything that comes near it, which is what basically Meherabad. I have a story to tell you about my brother, because when I went to see Baba, he asked me, "Where's your brother?" That was Edward. And Edward was in Miami, and he couldn't go because, well, I get into this whole story, but my father tried to stop us and with the police and everything. And it's a story. Anyhow, he's trying to stop us. And Edward decided to go back with him, but my father said, "I'm not financing 2 expeditions. One is enough, you can go, because you were working with me and he wasn't." Crazy stuff. But anyhow, I asked Edward, I said, "Man, listen, Baba did say we should both come together. So I'm not going to go anywhere, and we just stay here in New York and work it out somehow." But he said no, he had to go back with my dad, our dad, and he just wanted to do, he said, "You go and you prepare a place for me or whatever you do, and, and I'll come later." I said, "Well, if you decided that you're not going to go, then I will go. Otherwise," I say, "we go together." Well, anyhow, it worked out that I left. Now, the part I'm getting to is that Baba asked, "Where is Edward?" And I told Baba, I said, "Well, there were difficulties in the family, and my dad objected to everything, and anyhow, I shortened the story. Baba already knew this, so he said, "All right, you send Edward a telegram, and you tell him that I will be with him, as you are with me." He told him that. Now, I'm going to skip over what happened over those 2 weeks and just tell you what happened when I came back and talked to Edward. So I came back, I arrived, and I said, "Well, how things have been?" And he tells me, he says, "I want to tell you, I like to go and sit on the beach wall where Miami Beach is, and just sit on the wall. And these kids would come up to me, these children, and they would just hug me, hold me like that. They never did that before. And he was just being really loved, I suppose you could say, by the children, by their action." And then he said, "I walk in the street and people turn around and they look at me. And they just, when I'm walking, I don't know the people, but they do that." So then he said, "I didn't know what was happening until I got your telegram that Baba would be with me." So Baba put himself with Edward. And that's what would happen when Baba would walk in the street. You see, people would turn around and they would be, impressed, someone special, or whatever whatever feelings they had. And people loved to stay with Baba. I wanted to stay with him. I didn't want to return back. But Baba told me, he said, "Now you have to leave." First he asked me, "If I ask you to go, would you go?" Well, what am I going to say? No? So I said, "Yes, if that's what you want." And then Baba said, you leave and you go back and you tell others of what you experienced here. So then he motioned for me to come over to him and he gave me a big hug and embrace. And then I stepped back to go. And that's when I had told this before to others, but that's when I felt this incredible energy, that it was a life force energy of some form. And when I stepped back, I couldn't even keep my hands still. It, it was making me very restless, and it lasted until the next day. And then it subsided, went away. But there was that, and I felt it wasn't like electricity or that kind of energy. It was, all I can say, a life force energy. It was very powerful and very unexpected as well. So, I'm open for questions. I don't know how long you wanted me to talk. Yeah,
Edward, you said, Edward,
Irwin.
we known each other since 1970. You were at the point when you came to India thinking that you were going to be with Baba for just 1 hour.
Yeah,
And then Baba told you, you be with me. And he took you everywhere in his car and throughout the city and all that shebang. Please tell us about it, sir.
I like the way he puts it, it's really good. You should be, come on over here, you should be giving the talk, for God's sakes. All right, sit there, I'll tell it. Well, no, what he's saying is so, because he's heard me tell about it. But I wanted to stay with Baba. I tell you, once I was with him, I didn't want to go nowhere. But then Baba is on a mission. He has his work to do, and he sent me back to do that. There was even, so what happened, for 10 years, he was directing and guiding Edward and me and the whole family and everybody else that that came connected with the family. I mean, it was amazing through these letters. And even my father, who was so against him, boy, was he against him. He said the worst things about him. And then he would write to Baba how he's just nothing but trying to get money and everything else out of his people. I mean, he made up he made a case for himself. And he was telling him that these two sons of mine, they're just thieves and they robbers, and they're not the kind of disciples that you would want. You should tell them that they should never come and they'll never get God realization, and that you want to leave, to excommunicate them. That's the way he actually said this in letters. He was writing to it like that. So how did Baba answer? Baba answers him and he says, Dear Mr. Locke, you're apparently very concerned about your family, and you want the love to stay in your family. Bob is very happy about this, and he likes for family harmony. And Baba is, Erich is writing this for Baba, dictating it. Baba sends his love and blessings to you and Edward and Irwin and the family. That's the way he answered him. There was no retaliation for whatever terrible things he was saying or defending himself or not. He just told him straightforward something that would mean something to him, because you see, he was also concerned that Baba was going to take the love that we had and put it to himself, and not it shouldn't go to the family. And boy, he was worried about that. What? Did you want to say something? No. Okay. Not.
Irwin,
Yeah.
how did you start writing poetry?
Well, first you gotta hear a poem to see if you even like it. I personally didn't like poetry for years until I read the book Stay with God that Francis Brabazon had written. It was the first time that I really liked it. And the reason I liked it is because it really said something besides being flowery and saying how nice the rainbow looks and how good the people are in the houses and all the worries of the world. I wasn't going to write that way. I mean, he wasn't writing that way. He was writing about things that really mattered inwardly. Anyhow, you can read the book yourself if you want to know. It's the first time I liked poetry. But then, and this is after Papa had passed away. Well, first, no, I got to say this. I used to write poems to Baba all the time. And in the letters that I would send, how do you write to an avatar? How are you? Do you feel all right today? You don't write like that. Excuse me. This is what happens when you just come out of a hospital. Well, anyhow. I use this word anyhow too much. Judy tells me that. But I like it. It's appropriate, for things. I picked out a few poems here. And this one, what is this time? This is, wait a minute. You see, it's always good to have good eyes. If you can read, you need good eyes. So I have a helper. My glasses. Okay. Now let's see. What do I pick out here? This is called Trilogy Books 1, 2, and 3. I wrote 3 books. I figured it's too many books. Let's put them all into one. So this way it's easier for everybody if they want to read what I write. This is called Journey Across Time. You were frozen. You did not move. Nothing anywhere moved. There was no time. A second and a year was the same. Time would soon start when the first movement of anything would start. So you moved to start time. You moved to start time. I once fell in love. I could do this in your world of time. So could you, so could anyone. Such a lover you became. A world full of lovers. You loved everyone. This world where everything moves, from the smallest to the largest, there is always time for everything. No one can see you, the maker of movement, time, and love. These are your coverings. If you want to see him, do what he wants. Do what the saints do. Ask him to still your mind. Do the impossible and bring it to a stop. Like magic, he appears, your own unlimited existence, the great lover behind the veil. Someday, when I get old and gray, you may show yourself when you bring to a stop all you started, when there is no more time left to keep us separate. That was that. About time. So I write this kind of poetry, you see. You can call it poetry if you want. But anyhow, I just read you one. You want to ask a question?
Can you describe how you felt when you first met Baba?
Okay, that's fair question.
Oh, sorry, I'm gonna say it so the camera can hear. Can you explain, or can you describe, is there any way to describe how you felt the first time you met Bob in person?
Okay, I can talk about that. Huh? Well, you asked me how I felt. I felt like a long lost son that had one day come home. When Baba greeted me so warmly and affectionately, it was like I always knew him. Uh, I had just been away for a while, maybe a long while, because it takes time to uh, be knocking around the universe for ages to realize what you need to know. And eventually to realize that what you need to know is the fullness of your complete self and not just a fraction of it as we experience today. So my feeling was I liked him right away and he liked me. We got along just fine. And he is so friendly, there's there was like the elder in the family. You could go to him. And then on his own, he would just say the various things that he wanted everybody to know. In the meantime, you could entertain him. He liked entertainment. Sometimes he would be joking around himself, and he would say that he would ask maybe some lady that was in the near him, and he would say, "Why don't you dance for me?" And for everybody sitting there, she says, "Oh, Baba, I can't dance." He says, "No, I'm the only one here. They don't worry about anybody else. I'm just the only one here. You go dance for me." And she would do the most funniest dance, you can imagine. So everybody would be laughing, and Baba would chuckle, and then she would get the sense of the fun of it. And just an example of one thing that he liked. He also liked he would play cards. I played cards with Baba and the group that was there. So we were all like in a circle, and someone would hand each of us a card, and then one card down and one card up. So they would look at their card, and all of a sudden there would be a shout. Every other person, and it was every other person, would shout because they had won, and all the others were losers. And now, if you were a loser, you had to rub your nose on the carpet. And then Baba said, "It's really the losers who are winning because they're rubbing away their sanskaras and their bindings in front of me." He can make things like that possible, and at the same time, you can have fun. Everybody was having fun because you could be a loser and a winner many, many times. The game would keep going on over and over again. Now, Baba, the way he played it, because he's also part of the game, after the cards were given to each person, Baba would point to someone, "What do you got?" And then he had a good hand, you see. So Baba would say, "Give me that hand. And here, take this." His bad hand. So Baba always won, you see. But he cheated in front of everybody. It was not like he's doing things behind your back. And it was just part of the fun. Baba liked music a lot. Madhusudan was someone that would sing ghazals for Baba. And when I was there, he was singing these ghazals. And Baba was very animated when he would sing because these ghazals are love songs to God. That's what the basis of a ghazal is. And they're sung in India. But Baba would express the divine self loving to hear this because Baba liked you to express your love. Sometimes he would ask, "Do you love me?" A person would say, "Baba, you know I love you." And he said, "But I like to hear it from you." like that. You see, you have to be a part of whatever it is. And Baba was not exclusive. Uh, when he did things, it usually carried over to many, many people. I'll give you an example. In the Bible, it states that when the Messiah comes or Jesus comes or whatever, he'll come down through the clouds and he will be there to enlighten the world. So, did Baba come through the clouds? He came in a plane. Does that count? And now he's made it so everybody can come through the clouds. And he's not exclusive. It's everybody. Then, look, some of this is my own view too. But I'm telling you what I think also. And then it is prophesied that he would, let me see, what was that? There was another thing that I'll come to that later after I think of what it is again. Things slip my mind these days, you know. I'm only 87. You know, I'm just a kid in his world, but I'm an old man here. Although I don't feel 87, I must tell you, I feel pretty good. Uh, the whole time I was in the hospital, which was for 5 days, I was feeling great. And then they tell me when I came in, they said, you have pneumonia, so you got to be treated. I had no symptoms, no nothing. I was all right. So they gave me antibiotics and all that. This was great. And I'm still here to tell the story. That's right, you know. I asked them, well, how old do you think I am? You know, sometimes they say, oh, well, you must be maybe in your 60s, early 60s. I said, look, when I'm 300 years old, and you can phone and you're 60 now yourself, you'll only be 40 years younger than me. You'll be 260 years old, and I'll be 300. And it's not that much of a difference. Anyhow, that's what I tell people. Sometimes that is true. You can cut this part out if you want. Yeah.
We were talking about your father, and now Baba had several wet response.
Oh, yeah, I should give you over. You see, my dad was very opposed. He was giving these letters. He would write about the worst letters I ever heard. And condemning his two sons that they were not worthy of doing anything with be with him. He said all this thing. He'd make up all kinds of things, but he didn't. He always a good man. Should have been a lawyer, but he wasn't. He was in real estate business. Well, anyhow, I'm just saying that he would write about that. So then he would get these letters back. I'll have this most of them. And Baba was so fruitful. This is all going to he asked so many questions that Baba should do this and that and the other. And Baba just kept telling him very lovingly things about to do with his family and and how much he liked Muhammad to be with family, and that he wants everyone to fly back and to be able to join him in his business. Oh boy, after a while, I'm talking a while being 2 years, he said, he says, I can ask him, if he was telling me that Baba, Baba's letters, he likes his letters. And then I asked him, so he was telling me about his friends, You see, my dad was very, very critical. He would find fault with anybody and anything. That's how he was. And he would be very outspoken about it. He didn't care who heard about it. On the time they were faced, he didn't like something. We can be sure he would tell you that. Anyhow, this is what happened. When, when Bala was, Bala sent me these letters over. So one day he's telling me about his friends, and he was telling me all the quirks and things you want with them. And then I said, well, what about Meherabad? And he said, yes, Meherabad understands. That's what he said. And I understand. About Baba as his friend, always been a friend. I could follow him as to follow eternity. I mean, the things that he would say were really, the most closest disciple would be thankful for the same to express themselves that way. And he did. And then, so, he was a non-believer in life after death. And he was also, it was hard for him to understand anything of the spiritual aspects of what we were doing. But then I directed my thoughts to Brahma. It was a direction. I thought, and I asked Brahma to do something for him that he would be undeniable. He could not deny it. But he needed to have something because he was so stuck in his own views. If there's something you can do to make it undeniable for him that he couldn't say it didn't happen. Well, one day, not long after that, he tells me, we're together, and he tells me, something happened. Something happened, and I know that it happened because I'm a realist. And I must tell you that it definitely happened. And he goes on about it happened, but what happened? You see, that part is left out. But he keeps telling me something really happened that I just know it is true because I'm a realist. I know what I see and I know what I know, and that happened. So I said, look, Dad, I've heard many stories about people having experiences. We have music to this? So anyhow, then he says to me, he says, listen, I'm not going to tell you because you'll never believe it. And there's no point to tell you. And he keeps going on about it. I won't believe it. Every time I mention it, look, I've heard many stories about people's experiences and what I have no reason to disbelieve any of them. They said it happened and it's okay. So if you want to tell me what happened, go ahead. I'd just like to know that now that you mentioned it. So finally he says, all right. After some time of refusing to say a word about it, he says, all right. And he says, this is what happened. I was sitting in my chair at home, and then all of a sudden, I feel a presence in the room because I'm reading the paper, and I put the paper down, and there's Baba standing there. He's standing right in front of me, and he's wearing his white robe, and there were two disciples with him, and he motioned for them to sit down on the carpet there next to him. And then Baba spoke to me, and he said, don't be surprised that you hear me speak, because where I am now, I can speak. Wow, he says this. And then there were other things that he told my dad. And my father never is one to listen, he's the one to talk, but he was listening. And then Baba said, he told me that Baba told him that he would come 3 times, but the third time would be the last. And actually, later on, it really did happen. And the second time he came, he said, again, he was in his chair just reading, and he feels a presence again in the room and a hand on his shoulder. And he turns and looks, and there's Baba. Now, my father had an outing with my other brother, Richard, who was getting married. And they had some sort of argument or dispute or whatever. And my father was going to pay for the whole thing, the whole marriage, and all the things that involved. And uh, and then when they had this argument, he says, "I'm not doing anything now. I'm finished. I'm not doing anything for you. You can do whatever you want on your own." And now this was a problem because, he was not in a position to afford the kind of people and everybody coming in. Anyhow, that was difficult. So now Baba is there with him. And Baba, he tells me that Baba asked him what he was troubled by. And then he said about this argument that he had with his son, and he decided not to do anything to support that marriage. And Baba said, "It'll be okay. You can support it. Do everything like you had planned originally. Just do it." I'm paraphrasing the way Baba said, but that was the essence of it. And then afterwards, he disappeared again, and my father calls me because I was now in Myrtle Beach, and he says, I tell you, this second time that he came to me, and this is what happened, and I'm telling you, I would never have listened if the rabbi had said to do this. But because Baba said it, I'm going to do it. And he calls my brother and he says, "I'm going to do everything now." He completely reversed himself. Unbelievable, for him to reverse himself. You reversed yourself, not him reversed himself. But now he was doing this. Why? Because now he respected Baba so much and appreciated. How can you measure that? Finally, I'm going to draw him to a sort of a conclusion. We're running out of time, I suppose. And when he was 94, that's when he died. He passed away out of his body and all of that. So, but before that, maybe a year or two before it, I asked him, "Well, what do you think of Baba now? Do you think he's God, or what do you think?" And he said, "Now I am one of you." That was his reply. "Now I am one of you," was his reply. See, can you believe it from that? What?
I'm sorry, for the last, would you mind telling us very quickly about when Baba dropped his body, about being at the tomb?
Well, we're here at the Samadhi, yeah. That was the first Amartithi, which was not called Amartithi at that time. It was just Baba dropped his body. But boy, the experience, see, I came on the seventh day after he dropped his body. It was unknown to me, but it was the internment day, the day he was to be covered. And when I came up to Erich, as we approached my brother Edwin and I approached Meherabad Hill, which the Samadhi on top, he says to me, "Where are all the people from, where are they?" Because they were all told that they shouldn't come because it would be too much work for the mandali. So, but now I was able to help cover Baba by because they wanted me to, they brought me into the Samadhi to help with the cover Baba. Hey, there were lines of people, I mean, really hundreds of people coming for that darshan. So I told Erich basically what happened, that they wouldn't allow, what they weren't telling everybody what to not to come, because it'd be too much work for the mandali. So I'm looking around, I see all these people, hundreds and hundreds of people, maybe thousands coming, and more coming all the time. And Erich is looking at them, like, what, too much for us? Look at what's that. Look at all the people. He didn't say, look, but that's what his intention was. Now, then he took me up to the hill to go into the samadhi. And when I did, I saw Baba lying in the crypt. And he was wrapped up in cloth, in the cloth that they had around him, but you could see his face. And he had already been lying in state for 7 days, because now was the interment day. And the reason that it was the interment day was because when they asked Mehra, who was the woman most closest to Baba, they asked her, she said that now, after, now is the time to do it, because Baba had, you see, she had asked Baba on the last day when he was alive, how many more days are you going to have to suffer like this? And he said, 7 more days. And so it was the 7th day, February 7th, that he was now to be covered, you see. That was the thing. And that she decided that. Because she was so heartbroken. But yet, at the same time, there was such an atmosphere there. It was so exhilarating. There was a great energy in the air. I mean, it was just exhilarating. Anybody that was there couldn't help but feel it. But in Mara's case, because she had been grieving, because she was so personally close to him, and she didn't want to even live without him. But then, anyhow, she did live without him. And for 20 years before she passed away, she would tell all these glorious stories to whoever came about what happened when she was with Bob and the things that he would say, and when they were having tea together, and how she would brush his hair back, and all the intimate things that couples might do. And Baba loved her very much, and she loved Baba very much. Baba went so far as to say she was the purest amongst women that had been living in the world. But everybody was benefited because she would tell these incredible tales. And now when I went there in 1961, I filmed her telling these stories. And it was the first time that she was ever filmed with it, because it was only a year after Baba dropped his body that I was there. And all these mandali, for the first time, were explaining and expressing with all the emotion of in themselves of what happened during the years that they were present with Baba, and what Baba said and did with each of them. Oh boy, it's something for the world to see, because they were films. You see, it was all filmed. It's like that. Did I answer your question?
Thank you so much.
I don't know.
Yes. I think it's after 6 now. We could go on for hours.
No, we're done.
Does anybody have a really desperate, pressing question? Otherwise, we just say thank you so very, very much.
It's my pleasure to have all these remembrances with my family of lovers here at Baba. Meherabad.